My colleague Eva, who had suffered a terrible accident, was working with her head down, avoiding people's eyes. Suddenly, an inappropriately loud laugh disrupted the somber atmosphere of the office. "Look at that battered face. You're like a monster. Monsters shouldn't come to the office, haha." The unreserved loud voice of our boss, Kevin, struck her heart like a sharp arrow. Ava, who had been holding on until the last moment, finally couldn't hold back and started to shake her shoulders slightly. The moment I saw a tear drop from her face, which she covered with her hands, my head heated up in anger. I'm fed up with losing the smiles of those I care about. With that thought, I began to plan a meeting with a certain person. My name is Tyler. I'm a 35-year-old ordinary office worker. My family runs a hospital, and I was given everything I needed since I was young. My parents allowed me to freely pursue any hobbies or interests I had and provided a good environment for my education. However, I had no outstanding talents and realized by the time I entered elementary school that I had no particular skills. In contrast to me, my younger brother, 2 years my junior, Kyle, quickly achieved notable results. Kyle, with intelligence much like our father's, continued to deliver results one after the other, quickly becoming the focus of our father's expectations. But I didn't resent that. Instead, I was thankful that I could live freely without any constraints. However, this relationship crumbled during middle school. While I aimlessly attended a local middle school, Kyle was accepted into a prestigious middle school in New York. Seeing Kyle aiming for medical school to follow in our father's footsteps, I started to feel a sense of alienation. My father also seemed to pay attention only to Kyle, as if I didn't exist. Having lost all confidence, I became unable to attend school and started to shut myself in my room. The one who continued to love me unchanged was my mother. "You have your own strengths, don't worry. There are so many fun things in the world. You don't have to rush." My mother was an optimist and always reassured me. Hearing her words somehow eased my anxiety, and I felt that I had value as I was. Thanks to her, I managed to graduate from middle school and went on to a local high school. I had been playing games as a hobby, and on a whim, I decided to create my own game, which was unexpectedly well received when I presented it at the school festival. Seeing me interact with classmates through my game, my mother was very pleased. "I'm glad you found something you're passionate about." I still clearly remember her smiling face when she said that. It was soon after that when my mother was diagnosed with a serious illness. The once cheerful mother grew thinner and lost her energy day by day. The treatment started, but it was only enough to slow the progression of the illness, not cure it. The medication made her lose a lot of weight and she lost her hair. Eventually, she couldn't live at home anymore and spent her days lying in her hospital bed. Just before she passed away, she muttered with a sad face, "Why me? I still want to live." The sight of my grieving mother was so painful that I wanted to look away, and it's deeply etched in my memory. Afterward, I became a working adult and joined a newly established game company, determined not to disappoint my mother in heaven. I dedicated myself to work every day. "Good morning, you're looking down again. Cheer up." The one who greeted me energetically was my colleague Ava. She was cheerful and friendly to everyone, brightening the atmosphere at work. Not only was her mood uplifting, but she was also highly skilled, having contributed to several hit projects as a programmer. Talented, action-oriented, and beautiful, Ava was indeed a perfect woman. She never got carried away by her abilities and always approached her work with seriousness, which I deeply respected. Ava, with her eyes sparkling, approached me just as I arrived at work. "Hey, I heard we're getting a new department head. I wonder what kind of person they'll be," she said. "Oh, that's right. Starting today, the new department head, an elite graduate from a prestigious university, was specially recruited from another company by our upper management." We were initially hopeful about the new department head's arrival, but within a month, we were fed up. The department head, named Kevin, was in his prime working years in his 40s. However, he seemed quite confident in himself and never tried to hide his attitude that he was superior in any situation. "I'm the reason this company's performance improved. Stop complaining and just follow the orders." With an annoyingly loud voice and a pompous attitude, he ordered his subordinates around. Because of Kevin's habit of asserting his superiority at every opportunity, the previously relaxed atmosphere of our workplace gradually became tense and uncomfortable. Kevin, without considering the situation on the ground, kept bringing in more work. As a result, the employees were forced to work tirelessly, ending up with daily overtime. Despite this, since the numbers showed an increase in the department's sales, the upper management praised Kevin. This led to a vicious cycle where Kevin's attitude became even more arrogant, and his unreasonable demands on his subordinates continued unabated. It would have been tolerable if he was competent, but when Kevin came along with me to meet a client, insisting on his superiority even there, it ended terribly. During the final discussions with the client, Kevin interjected, "What? You can't even handle this level of work and outsource it to us?" Kevin, as usual, looked down on the client with his condescending attitude. The moment my face turned pale and the client became furious, announcing the deal was off happened simultaneously. Years of trust I had built with the client were destroyed by a single comment from Kevin. "How could you do this?" This client was supposed to work with us for the next 10 years. I protested to Kevin when we got back, but he nonchalantly retorted, "What's the point of any plan if it doesn't make money? It's a waste of time." Talking to such a small client, Kevin seemed completely unconcerned about the broken deal being his fault. "The company's profit comes first. This is the problem with you. I've been working hard to earn that client's trust. You've made all that effort go to waste because of your actions, Kevin." Kevin glared at me menacingly as I protested impulsively. "If you're going against me, you better be prepared. I can always complain about your work attitude to upper management." Kevin's veiled threat of punishment made me bite my lip and fall silent. After my mother's death, my performance at the company was all that supported me, having never been recognized by anyone else. Yet the frustration only grew, having to work under such an irresponsible boss. I wanted nothing to do with him anymore, but the pain of having to see his face every day at work was unbearable. Since then, I've been careful to avoid working with Kevin as much as possible, but he kept causing trouble for other subordinates as well. He wouldn't bother to learn document preparation or administration procedures, saying such simple tasks should be done by subordinates, and dumped everything on us. At times, he would even take documents without asking, including taking documents containing sensitive personal information to another company. It nearly turned into a major crisis, but Ava, who was with him at the time, apologized profusely. Thanks to her, the situation didn't escalate, and it was resolved within our department, but it could have easily become an emergency that threatened the company's existence. Yet, Kevin continued his defiant attitude without admitting any fault. Preparing easy-to-understand materials for the supervisor is the subordinate's job. It was almost a big crisis because of your lack of attentiveness. Ava was the first to lose patience with Kevin's unapologetic behaviour. On the day of the personal information incident, Ava invited me out for drinks. She, too, had been troubled by Kevin's terrible attitude on a regular basis. It's not just today. I went to a meeting with him before, and he started lecturing the client arrogantly, causing a lot of trouble, she said. I thought so. It's bad enough with people inside the company, but causing trouble for our clients is too much. So Eva and I ended up venting to each other. But there was nothing we could do about it. I was just hoping Kevin would be transferred out as soon as possible, but Ava had other plans. From the next day, Ava began to firmly say no to Kevin. That day, as Kevin was criticizing the work of his subordinates as usual, without providing any concrete suggestions for improvement, Eva spoke up. Taking her hand firmly in mine, I spoke with sincerity. Don't worry about a thing. I'll always be here for you, so there's no need to worry, just as my mother used to encourage me. I spoke gently and gave her a reassuring smile. Working together at this company, Ava always greeted me with a radiant smile. Now was the time to return the favour. I thought as I gently patted her back with encouragement. Soon after, I was called in by the upper management. I was subjected to a stern questioning. It was about the incident where Kevin took documents containing personal information to another company. Somehow, the story had been twisted to suggest that it was not Kevin, but I who had made the mistake, and the management was grilling me. I had no recollection of such an event and desperately tried to explain, but no one would listen. Before I knew it, my transfer to a rural area was decided. All this happened just a few hours after my confrontation with Kevin. It was too well executed to be coincidental, and later an unbelievable truth came to light. Kevin had apparently been doing this kind of thing repeatedly in the past. Whenever he made a mistake, he would take his time to set up a subordinate to take the fall. He would fabricate all the evidence and then suddenly pin the blame on a subordinate, rushing the upper management decision to transfer or fire them before they could respond. This way, the blame for the mistake fell on an unsuspecting employee. Kevin planned to continue acting as a supervisor in the workplace, escaping any blame. The thought of being transferred because of someone else's mistake was unbearable. As I was fuming over what to do, I was called in by Nathan, who used to be my supervisor. Even if it was Kevin's suggestion, it's impossible for Tyler to do such a thing. But Kevin won't be satisfied with this situation as it is, Nathan said. It's frustrating, but we're currently devising a plan against Kevin. I'm sorry, but could you pretend to be transferred for a while? Nathan then suggested. I take some paid leave, having focused on work calls this time. I had about 3 weeks of vacation accumulated. Since Ava's accident, I had been working non-stop to fill the gap left by such a capable employee. Encouraged by Nathan's words to think of it as an extended break, I accepted the proposal. As I was about to leave the company, Nathan quietly informed me of something else. He mentioned contacting a certain individual. It was Harrison, the chairman of the group of companies overseeing ours. Chairman Harrison was often travelling around the world and rarely had the chance to return to America. But he was scheduled to come back to America soon, and Nathan would reach out to him on my behalf. Grateful for Nathan's arrangements, I decided to wait for the day I would meet Chairman Harrison. The first person I contacted that day was Kyle, now a respectable doctor, and having taken over our father's hospital. I had great respect for Kyle, but it had been a while since we last spoke on the phone, so I was nervous as I listened to the ringing tone. Tyler, it's rare for you to call me. Hearing the familiar voice that hadn't changed over the years, I felt the tension in my shoulders ease. I pleaded with Kyle for help, sharing with him Ava's situation. I told him about the injuries she sustained in the accident and my desire to heal the scars on her face as much as possible. After pondering for a while, Kyle promised to do everything within his power to help. I'd like to see her condition myself. I might be busy, but can you come to our hospital? I told Kyle we'd come right away and hung up. Ironically, thanks to Kevin, I had 3 weeks of paid leave and was ready to move at any time. I immediately contacted Ava and rushed to Kyle's hospital. I appreciate the thought, but are you sure they can treat me? The doctor I saw said it would be difficult without a highly skilled physician. Eva looked at me with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Besides, they said the good doctors are so popular that I couldn't get an appointment for the next 2 years. No problem. I'm sure it will be fine. The doctor she mentioned was probably Kyle. Kyle is a skilled plastic surgeon who has treated thousands of cases of scars, burns, and injuries. As the scars and indentations are carefully treated, the patient's expressions brighten. Kyle once said that seeing their smiles is the greatest reward of all. Supporting a worried Ava, we hurried to the hospital where Kyle was waiting in a consultation room. Kyle carefully examined Ava's facial injuries and nodded confidently. It's okay. There's no damage to the bones, and the damaged nerves around the mouth can be carefully repaired with surgical suturing. Let's schedule you for surgery. Encouraged by his confident words, Ava looked up in surprise, straightening her back with the vivacity she had before the injury. She finally showed a smile. Once the hospital stay and surgery were scheduled, we discussed the plans on our taxi ride home. I thought I'd have to live with this face forever, but the thought of being able to return to how I was before makes me so happy. Seeing Eva's spirits lifted, I too felt relieved. Thanks to Kyle, she was able to look forward again. I'll definitely get back at Kevin once I'm healed. I won't forgive him. I thought her anger was due to his comments at the office, but as she elaborated, I was horrified. It wasn't just what he said that was awful, but the cause of the accident. He was road raging. He braked suddenly and swerved lanes just because he didn't like the car behind us. Eva began to recount the situation at the time of the accident, still seething with anger. Although Kevin claimed Eva was driving that day, it turned out he insisted on driving himself. But his driving skills were poor, and Eva, sitting in the passenger seat, was nervous. At one point, Kevin sneezed and accidentally hit the brakes. The sudden braking during the drive led to the car behind them honking lightly. However, Kevin, mistaking it for provocation, became furious. He started braking abruptly and swerving to obstruct the lane change of the car behind, thinking of retaliating. Eva tried to calm Kevin down and offered to drive instead, but his pride wouldn't allow him to stop his reckless driving, saying he was just teaching a rude person a lesson. As a result, distracted by the car behind, Kevin caused an accident, but covered up the fact that he was driving during the investigation, just as he always did at work. He pinned blame on his subordinate. Upon hearing that, I acted quickly. I checked the dash cam footage from the company car involved in the accident to find the relevant footage. With all preparations complete, I awaited the day of reckoning, feeling relieved. Meanwhile, with Ava and me absent from the company, Kevin was visibly in a better mood. If you defy me, you'll end up like Tyler and Ava, unable to stay in the company, he threatened, harassing any employee he disliked. As reports of his behaviour reached me, my 3-week paid leave came to an end, and it was time to return to work. Executive Nathan called me in and asked me to wait in a room at the company. Chairman Harrison, who had just returned from an overseas inspection, was visiting the company, causing a stir since the morning. Kevin, on the other hand, was eager to meet Chairman Harrison and promote himself, pacing near the office. When Chairman Harrison arrived, he began chatting with Nathan. Kevin, having no business there, hovered nearby, desperate for attention. After about 10 minutes of conversation, Chairman Harrison turned to Kevin with a surprised expression as if he had just noticed him. "So, you're the famous Kevin I've heard about, an elite graduate from a prestigious university. I hear I've been told your department has seen a significant improvement in performance." "Thank you very much." Even Kevin, as self-centered as he is, seemed unable to behave recklessly in front of the chairman of the group company. If an employee as capable as you can get along well with that person. Chairman Harrison's words trailed off, leaving an air of expectation in the room. "I'm sure you'll achieve great results together. After all, that person is one of the most promising talents in our company," Chairman Harrison said, intentionally leaving Kevin puzzled. With an exaggerated gaze around the room, he then grew stern as he pressed on. "It seems my grandchild is nowhere to be seen here." Kevin, not knowing who he was referring to, started to sweat and panic. Chairman Harrison lowered his voice and interrogated him. "Your grandchild works at this company, Kevin." Trembling and sweating profusely at the menacing tone of Chairman Harrison's voice, Kevin was at a loss for words. That's when I, who had been waiting in the next room, made my appearance. Ignoring Kevin, who was staring at me in shock, I turned to Nathan. "Thank you for the 3-week break. It was very refreshing. I'm glad you could rest. Keep up the hard work." At that point, Kevin seemed to realize something as he stared intently at me. Then, Chairman Harrison approached me, starting a cheerful conversation. "I thought you might have been transferred out since you were gone," he said. "As if I could be transferred from a subsidiary company owned by my grandfather," I replied. Saying that, I slowly turned to look at Kevin. He must have been quite taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was moving silently. In fact, this group company founded by my grandfather operates in a wide range of fields, from the hospital where my father and Kyle work to the management of my game company, I continued. However, I had joined this company without using my family's connections, so only the president and Nathan knew this fact. After a while, Kevin coughed a few times and then started talking to me in a strangely familiar tone, as if hearing this for the first time. "I always thought Tyler was an exceptional employee, truly worthy of being Chairman Harrison's grandson," he said. "Enough with the lies. I've heard all about you from my grandson." Chairman Harrison's words left Kevin opening and closing his mouth in a futile attempt at excuses. "Moreover, you caused an accident and then fled, pushing the blame onto a subordinate. Leave this company immediately." Unable to make his usual excuses, Kevin let out a pitiful cry and staggered out of the company. Afterwards, the company submitted the dash cam footage to the police. Our company's dash cams recorded not only the front and rear of the vehicle, but also the interior. The footage clearly showed Kevin's reckless driving at the time of the accident. Kevin, having caused the accident, had the paramedics set Eva away first. Then he falsely reported to the police that the severely injured Ava was the one driving. Normally, such a thing would be difficult to cover up, but it turns out Kevin's uncle holds a significant position within the police force and tried to sweep it under the rug. Apparently, his uncle also found it inconvenient to have a relative involved in a scandal, and Kevin had been let off for minor offences like parking violations in the past. He must have thought he could hide this accident as well. Kevin's cowardice in engaging in reckless driving and then trying to pin the blame on Ava outraged the employees. Ava, unaware of these details, was quite shocked to learn the truth. Preoccupied with her facial scars, she never dreamed she would be made responsible for the accident. It was all a part of Kevin's despicable scheme to evade responsibility. As a result, Kevin was arrested by the police with evidence against him and his attempt at malicious evidence tampering. He was expected to face severe punishment. The last time I saw him, Kevin had lost the confidence he once had and looked gaunt and pale, a shadow of his former self. I hope he spends the rest of his life facing up to the crimes he committed and doing his best to make amends. Afterwards, I visited Ava post-surgery to support her through her recovery. Though she may not have returned completely to her former self, she now smiles at me without hiding her face. Her bright expression was just like the Ava I knew before. I've never been more grateful to have a skilled plastic surgeon as a brother. Furthermore, Ava's surgery led me to reconnect with my family from whom I had been estranged. To my surprise, my father and Kyle had purchased the games I was involved in. "Your games are really interesting," Kyle said, the skilled plastic surgeon engrossed in my creation, which brought a laugh to my lips. Feeling previously alienated, I now realized my family had always been waiting for me despite my avoidance. This connection was all thanks to Ava. Now Ava's beauty has fully returned to her face. "Tyler, you're my saviour." "Thank you so much," she said, extending her hand, which I gladly took. As we looked into each other's eyes, we both smiled, our cheeks relaxing in unison.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.